The future of cryptocurrency is now.
Hello, this is Paul Stryer from BitcoinBeginner.Rocks. Today we are going to convert your Ethos mining rig from obtaining IP addresses dynamically from DHCP to a static IP address configuration. With any and all server installations, it is important to configure each server with a static IP address so the IP address on the server remains the same at all times. Your Ethos installation is set to DHCP by default, and although the DHCP configuration works fine, it sucks to go away for a weekend just to come home to find out your mining rig has not been mining all weekend due to a power outage and the DHCP pool being full when the mining rig rebooted. Ask me how I know. Remember, when your mining machine is down, you are not making money. So let's get to the fun and configure your Ethos mining rig to have a static IP configuration. Before I change my Ethos DHCP acquired IP address, I like to take a quick look around and get familiar with what addressing I did get from DHCP. This is not required for you to change to a static IP address, but I find that it's a good exercise to make sure that you really understand what's going on with your network and what you are doing. So it's just a good way for you to learn. So let's take a quick look here at what I have. So what I've done here is I'm on my laptop. My laptop is connected to my network in my house, and it's connected to the Wi-Fi. So I want to see what addresses my laptop got, and from that we can deduce what addresses we are getting for our Ethos mining rigs. So first of all, let's go to a command prompt. All I had to do is go to the start window, and in the little search window I did CMD and hit enter, and it opened up the command prompt. Sometimes you'll have an icon on the desktop that you can click. And from here I'm going to type ipconfig/all. When I do that, there's quite a bit of stuff that comes up on the screen here, but if you notice in the middle here, we'll move it to the top, I have my Wi-Fi settings. And as you can see, I have the address of 192.168.0.72 and a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. I have my lease start and stop time, and then I have my default gateway. Also, you can see that the DHCP server is the default gateway. My internet router is my default gateway in this case, and it also is my DHCP server. You can also see the two addresses that my internet router is using for DNS resolution. And you can also see the IPv6 addresses, but for now we're only worried about IPv4 addresses. Now that we've seen information about our addresses that I have on my laptop, well, my mining rig is going to be something different than 72, but everything else will be the same. My default gateway, my DNS server and information, and my DHCP information. That'll be the same because they're on the same network. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at my internet router. So my internet router is a Netgear, and I went into the Netgear address. So I went to that default gateway in my browser. This is my browser, my Firefox, and I went to 192.168.0.1. I entered my username and password for the router. I surfed to advanced and then LAN settings. Now your internet router might be different unless you have the same brand as what I have, but whatever brand you have, once you log in, if you look for usually LAN settings, you'll usually find the information you're looking for. As you can see here, I have an IP address, I have a subnet mask, and I have a starting and an ending address. And the starting and ending address is shows that I have a range from 10 to 99. So 192.168.0.10 all the way out to 192.168.0.99 is what this DHCP server is going to hand out for addresses. So anything 1 to 9, it's not going to hand out, and anything above 99, so 100 and above, it's not going to give out. So I'm probably going to want to put my mining rigs in anything above 100. So I'm going to use mine as the 100s as my GPU rigs and the 200s as my ASIC miners. So my very first GPU rig is going to be 101, so 192.168.0.101. And my first ASIC miner will be 192.168.0.201. That way, if I ever see an address that's a 100 range, I know it's probably a GPU miner, and anything that's a 200 range, well, that'll be a ASICs miner. So now, let's use Putty to SSH to our Ethos mining rig so that we can change it to a static IP address. So I'm going to open up Putty, and I'm going to go to Rogue One. Now, if I load this saved config, you can see it's going to 192.168.0.76. This is an address that's in my DHCP pool, so I obviously want to put my static address outside of that pool. Again, I'm going to use the 100 range for my GPU miners and the 200 range for my ASICs miners. So in this case, this is my first mining rig that I'm going to put onto a static address, so I will make this 101. So go ahead and open this. Get this into the middle here where you guys can see it. And let's go ahead and make it full size. And then let's log in. Now yours is probably set to Ethos live as the password. Mine is not set to live, and you probably want to change that to a different address. So in one of my other blogs, you'll be able to find out how to change the password. It's just a Linux command to do this, but I will show that in a different blog. So for this one, now what we want to do here is notice that I'm at the home/ethos directory. Well, we want to go to a different directory to get to the interfaces file that changes the ETH0 interface on this particular device. So in this case, I'm going to go to CD, and I'm going to go to /etc, etc, and then I'm going to say network. And then I'm going to go to sudo. Actually, let me do an ls first to show you what's in here. You can see there's a bunch of directories in here. We also have a interfaces file that we want to edit. Now to edit this, we want to edit it in supervisor mode or in supervisory mode. So I'm going to do sudo, which is turning on supervisor mode. Then I'm going to use nano, which is a very simple editing tool to be able to edit files. And then I'm going to tell it what file I want to edit. And here we go. Now you can see that I'm into the interfaces file, and here you can see that it has a default config, and this is the default config for Ethos settings. So now I'm going to use my down arrows. This is a very simplex editor, so you have to use your arrows and you can't just mouse down to it and click. So I'm going to come to this line here. So this line right here, iFace ETH0 iNet DHCP. Well, ETH0 is the only Ethernet interface on this Ethos box. If I had two Ethernets, I'd have ETH0 and ETH1, and ETH does not stand for Ethereum in this case, it stands for Ethernet. You can see that iFace ETH0 iNet DHCP. That's telling this device to use DHCP. So when I turn on, go out to the DHCP server and find out what my address is. Now I could go to the end of this and I could type static, or get rid of the DHCP and type static, and that's okay, but I like to do this. I like to type DHCP. I like to go to the, let's go back and change that to the right word, right acronym. And I like to put a pound in front of it, so that way I remember what was there. So if I ever want to go back to DHCP, it's fast and easy, because sometimes I don't remember when it's been a while. So I'll go here and I'll just type iFace again, and then ETH0, and then iNet, which is the same command, but I'm going to put static. Again, I could have just put it on that first line and kept, got rid of that first line. But in this case, the pound basically says ignore that line, and now we're going to start with this line that we just added. So now we're telling it to use static addressing, which means we need to put some addressing in now. So I'm going to hit enter and open up a space here, and I'm going to type address. And I'm going to put in my address that I want to be static. So 192.168.0.101. Now, your address will be different. You might have 10.10.10.1, whatever it is. Or you might actually end up having the same exact address. Whichever way, just make sure you're using your addresses and don't use my addresses from this example, because if you don't use the 192.168.0 network, you're going to have a problem. Or if there's already a 101 on your network, you're also going to have a duplicate IP address problem. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our net mask. So I'm going to type net mask, and I'm going to type 255.255.255.0, which is a 24-bit subnet mask, which is pretty standard for most generic networks. Then I'm going to type gateway. which means my default gateway, 192.168.0.1. Now that is the address of my internet router, which is also my DHCP router. They're the same, they're doing the two jobs, same device. But in this case, it's going to be the same as what DHCP gave us because it's the same device. But we're going to put it in statically because we're not going to have anybody giving us this address because we've turned off DHCP. The next thing we're going to do is type DNS name server. And then I'm going to type the name server address. So 8.8.8.8, which is Google's DNS server. Then I'm going to put a space, and I'm going to put a secondary address. Now, most of the time you want to use some other company's DNS server, but in this case, I'm just going to use Google's secondary number, 8.8.4.4. Easy to remember, easy to put in, so that's why I use them. But probably not the best thing to use is to use two from the same company. Even though if Google's down, we're probably not worried about if our mining, because we're probably the whole internet's down at this point if Google's down. So at this point, I think we're safe to say that one of those two devices will always be up. So now we've got a complete config here. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to hold the control key and I'm going to hit X. And see at the bottom, it says answer no or yes. So I want to say yes because I want to save it. If I hit no here, I'm going to go away and there will be no changes. It will be back to the default. But I'm going to just hit the Y key and that'll be it, Y. And notice it goes to, I'm going to write over the interfaces. So yes, I do want to write over the interfaces. So I'm going to hit enter. And now it's there. If you don't believe it stayed there and saved, I'm just going to use my up arrow, put the same command in, sudo nano interfaces, and hit enter. And you can see that our commands are still in the interfaces file. So at this point, I'm going to hit Control X, and it just goes right out because I didn't make any changes. It didn't ask me to save because it knows I didn't make any changes. So now, let's take a look at a couple of things. First of all, if I do an IF config, now this is the same thing as an IP config on Windows, but we're doing it in a Linux machine. So, and all the commands that we've used so far, going into the nano and going into the interfaces file and adding all those commands, they're just Linux commands. So if you can do this on your Ethos device, you can do this on any Linux box. And now you can do Linux anywhere for setting up static addresses. So now you can see in here that I have an Ethos and I have an IP address of 76. Well, wait a minute, we just set it to 101. Why didn't it change? Well, the reason it didn't change is because we have not rebooted the box or told the interface to go down and come back up. And also notice, we have some broadcast addresses and stuff, but at this point, let's do another command called route -n. And this is going to show us our routes in our routing table, and you can see the all zeros. Well, in most cases, in most devices, if you see all zeros, that means default gateway. So in Windows or in Linux, we typed gateway. In Windows, you see the default gateway, but it really is an all zeros network. And that all zeros is pointing to my internet router, 192.168.0.1. And that's going to be the same whether it's using DHCP or static because it's the same address no matter what. Let's do one more command, and let's do cat space etsy space So I did a cat /etsy /resolve resolv.conf. So it's abbreviated, resolve.conf. And we can see in this file that it's using these two addresses here for its name servers. Well, that's not what we put in. We put in 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.4.4. We haven't told this box to start using the new addresses that we've statically configured. Now, there are some commands that you can use that will bring the interface down, and then you can bring the interface back up, and it should change to the new addresses. I've had some mixed results in doing that, so I tend to just reboot the box. So normally what I'll do is I will hit an R right here and hit enter, which is a command Ethos added because usually you have to type reboot. They've added R where I can just hit R, and when I hit R, remember I'm SSH'd into this device, so I'm going to lose connectivity. So if I hit R, you'll see in a second, so it says the system's going down and I've lost my connectivity. But if I open up a DOS window and I type ping 192.168.0. our new address, for our -T to tell it to do continuous ping, we can sit here and watch until it starts pinging, and then we know the system is back up and running again. Now I'm going to pause the video until it comes up because it takes about 3 minutes, so no sense in you sitting here for 3 minutes. I'll pause the video and come back on when it comes back up. Okay, as you can see, I am now pinging 192.168.0.101 from my laptop. And my laptop's on the same network as my mining rig. So now we are good to go on this. So I'll hit Control-C to stop my ping. And then we'll go back to here, and we'll close this because that was that SSH window that closed down when we rebooted. And we will reopen Putty. Now remember, my saved configuration has my old address, so I'm going to want to resave this with 101 and hit save, and then I'll hit open. Let me put this into the middle, and you can see that it has found Rogue One. Come up with clever names for all of my rigs, like I have Rogue One for the first one, Dos Equis for the second one, and 3 Amigos for the third one, 4 Seasons for the fourth one, and so on. So I have names all the way up to 13 so far. I haven't figured out what 14, 15, and 16 is going to be yet. Let's do an Ethos, and remember you want to change your password from live to something harder. And we're in. So now, if I do a ping, www.yahoo.com, you can see this device is making it to the internet. So we're good to go. These devices, these Ethos devices, are really finicky, and if they don't get an address to the network, usually you won't even see any GPUs in your list of GPUs. It'll just come up and it'll say Ethos, but your GPUs won't be there. It does some crazy things. So now let's do a ifconfig, and you can see that my address is definitely the new address 101, and you can see my mask is here that we've typed in, and so on. If I do a route -n, you can see that I have that same address in my all zeros address. And if I do a cat /Etsy/resolv.conf, you can see that I now have my new name servers, and we know that the name servers works because if I do an up arrow and I go back to ping www.yahoo.com, you can see that that's working. It's resolving the address to this 98 address here. So that's working. So now we have static configurations on our Ethos mining rig. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you'll come back to BitcoinBeginner.Rocks for many other videos and useful blogs. Thank you and have a great day.